former combat officers who say that we don't need automatic weapons in the hands of civilians.
The gun industry is making millions off of these pistol braces. That might be one.
That they will have only 120 days to register these firearms or risk harsh NFA violations.
This is the most popular handgun in the United States that was purchased as a Glock 19.
This ruling has effectively, and for now at least, killed ATF's pistol brace rule.
After the ATF took a tough stance, arm bracing is once again an option. The Broto case, overturning the arm brace rule. The case that was resolved yesterday is the Broto case, Darren versus Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Yesterday's verdict invalidated the overall arm brace rule, not just for members of specific groups. This page, which is the first, begins with an overview of the National Firearms Act. The definition of a rifle is defined as an arm that is designed, manufactured, or assembled with the intention of being fired from the shoulder. It also includes any arm that can be easily converted back into a fixed cartridge.
The third, convert the pistol brace into a long-barreled rifle that does not require registration.
Former combat officers who say that we don't need automatic weapons in the hands of civilians.
The first, turn in the entire firearm with the attached stabilizing brace to the ATF, subjecting these firearms to draconian regulations under the National Firearms Act of 1934. Unelected anti-gun bureaucrats informed law-abiding gun owners possessing pistols with these braces. This 120-day amnesty window ends later this month, on May 31st. What comes before gun confiscation? Gun registration. That's right.
Accordingly, an arm that meets this definition of a rifle and has a barrel length of fewer than 16 inches is called a short barrel rifle. In other words, a rifle subject to the NFA, like all firearms, must be registered on a central registry together with the name and address of the authorized owner. A person who violates these requirements faces a $10,000 fine and up to 10 years in federal prison. The NFA's definition of firearms does not include any references to handguns or revolvers other than that which refers to an arm or revolver with a barrel with a smooth bore that has been modified or redesigned to fire a fixed shotgun shell. 26 U.S.C. 5841. SBR owners must also pay a $200 transfer tax that makes these arms subject to the NFA. Falls within the NFA's definition of firearm. Thus, common handgun and arm owners are ordinarily not subject to the NFA. Some larger handguns, due to their weight and recoil, may be difficult to fire with one hand, especially for individuals with limited strength or mobility. For these arms, a stabilizing brace may be attached to provide support and improve accuracy. After the March 2021 mass slaying in Boulder, Colorado, where the shooter was armed with an arm similar to this, the ATF became aware that new braces were starting to include features common to shoulder stocks. The evidence showed that owners use them as such. From 2012 to 2018, the ATF issued several classifications of stabilizing braces, concluding that a brace does not redesign a handgun to be fired from the shoulder. ATF looked into the matter again, and on January 31, 2023, ATF, under Joe Biden's order, gave them the directive to outlaw these as SBRs.
The gun industry is making millions off of these pistol braces. That might be one.
The functionality between that weapon and this weapon are exactly identical.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
They took the markup down in the wake of the Nashville shooting, which resulted in 9-year-olds being killed.
Not because of functionality, not because of how fast a round comes out of the weapon, just because you don't like the way that they look.
I thank the gentleman. This really is about saving lives.
P320, which some of you probably saw in one of the hearings on the magazine bans, I showed my P320.
New ATF regulation on designed to be fired from the shoulder. The ATF released a new regulation that, in accordance with the regulation, explained the statutory language designed, redesigned, made or remade, and intended to be fired from the shoulder. The term now refers to arms that have a stabilizing brace that increases surface area so that the arm can be fired from the shoulder, provided that other factors show that the arm is made and intended to be fired from the shoulder. These factors include weight, length, and pull measurements, as well as direct or indirect marketing from the manufacturer, the likelihood that the arm will be used in the general public, and whether the arm has sights or an eye-relieving scope that require the arm to be fired from the shoulder in order to be used as intended. Since most of these arms will be reclassified as bars, the phrase now includes arms with these features. If someone has an arm that the ATF has classed as an SSPR and they don't comply with the NFA within 120 days of the rule's publication date, which is obviously past due by now, they risk criminal prosecution. 3 distinguished Marine veterans are the claimants, and they assert that the provision applies to them because they have what are probably SBRs. A person breaches the Second Amendment. 2 transgresses the ideas of non-delegation and the division of powers. Because the definition of rifle in the NFPA is arbitrary and capricious as per the Administrative Procedure Act and is void due to vagueness, the plaintiffs are requesting an injunction to stop the ATF from enforcing the rule. Guys, this choice is fatal. Okay, the court proceeds to discuss the legal requirements for a preliminary injunction. Now let's go into the analysis. The most crucial of the 4 elements to meet the first requirement of likelihood of success on the merits is that plaintiffs have a reasonable chance of winning on the merits.
The ATF finalized its unconstitutional rule pertaining to firearms with stabilizing braces.
In addition, 40,000 Americans die from gun violence throughout the year.
Aftermath of gang shootings, they put this in place in the National Firearms Act.
That they will have only 120 days to register these firearms or risk harsh NFA violations.
Now, this is a Glock 19. Glock 19 comes with a 15-round magazine, which under this bill is legal, although it's interesting that
A veteran can buy a brace any day of the year. We love and respect and admire our veterans.
In January, the ATF finalized its unconstitutional rule pertaining to firearms with stabilizing braces.
Under the APA, plaintiffs must establish a prima facie case. They are not required to demonstrate that they will win. Courts are required to declare as unlawful and annual agency action findings and conclusions that are determined to be arbitrarily drawn, capricious, an abuse of discretion, or otherwise not compliant with the law, exceeding their statutory authority, exceeding their limitations, or falling short of their statutory rights. The APA is a rule-making body, yet it has frequently been argued that the ATF's rule is legally binding and hence not a reasonable result of a rule change. As a result, the ATF is effectively legislating and lacks the authority to follow that recent example. As the parties have acknowledged, this court does not start from scratch in light of the recent case of Mock v. Garland offers helpful advice there. A group that advocates for firearms individual arm owners who were braced by the Firearms Policy Coalition, along with the manufacture and retail of firearm accessories, filed a lawsuit under the APA contesting the same rule in court, which is currently on appeal.
Pistol, it can become a short-barreled rifle, and then it's subject under the National Firearms Act. That's what you're saying.
And Mr. Bosco, I think before this committee said that people were using stabilizing braces in ways that he hadn't anticipated.
Some liability exemption for their COVID vaccines, right?
I actually am not familiar with vaccines.
Well,
that's right. Under this bill, a conviction is not required. This will lead to bizarre consequences.
And the implementation of your rule. Did Congress pass a law? What changed?
Dettelbach is the director of ATF. You do agree with President Biden
that are not designed and intended to be shouldered would be classified and not covered.
Fifth Circuit ruling and District Court decision. The Fifth Circuit ruled that the proposed rule was a monumental mistake and that it was discriminatory, logically requiring it to be set aside as illegal. The ruling did not follow logically from the rule. After that, the Fifth Circuit remanded the case to the District Court to consider the remaining preliminary injunction factors and make decisions based on the Circuit Panel's ruling on the plaintiff's motion. The Fifth Circuit did not impose any restrictions on the topics the court could consider on remand, nor did it specify what decisions it should make in relation to a preliminary injunction or any other matter on remand. The plaintiffs had shown a likelihood of success in their challenge, according to the District Court presided over by Judge O'Connor. This was because, in addition to the Circuit Panel's ruling, that the rule failed the logical outgrowth test. Brace arms, which are now widely used and fall under the purview of the final rules enforcement, are still in common use.
This ruling has effectively, and for now at least, killed ATF's pistol brace rule.
Operation of the weapon, which means every time I depress the trigger, a round comes out of the firearm.
The Republican-controlled House has voted to overturn a key gun regulation that was put in place by President Biden.
This is the most popular handgun in the United States that was purchased is a Glock 19.
You know, that is a great question. I'm a mother of 4 kids, and after we see...
Just like that's a semi-automatic. The rifle's not available for purchase, don't have a selector switch for 3-round bursts.
But really to see that almost no Republicans...
As a result, their possession and use fall under the purview of the Second Amendment, especially in light of the Fifth Circuit's ruling. This court acknowledges that the rule was not a logical extension of the proposed rule, and that it must be declared unlawful. This rule alone proves that the plaintiffs have successfully challenged the rule under the APA. The judge then addresses the issue of irreparable harm, stating that the plaintiffs' use of the arms and their firing of them puts them at risk of 10 years in federal prison, which constitutes substantial harm. Now, let's go straight to the conclusion. The court is not insensitive to the ATF's concerns over arm industry gamesmanship and attempts to circumvent the NFA's restrictions on SBRs. However, the government may not simply posit that the regulation promotes an important interest to justify its regulation. Of course, some form of protest can be expected when constitutional rights are allegedly infringed. The passage of time and the development of new technology can also reveal latent ambiguities in a statute. Likewise, the court is certainly sympathetic to ATF's concerns over public safety in the wake of tragic mass slayings. The rule embodies salutary policy goals meant to protect vulnerable people in our society, but public safety concerns must be addressed in ways that are lawful. This rule is not. That's all for this video, folks. We'll see you next time.